Today on With the First Pick, we are ranking every single draft class from the 2025 NFL Draft. That's former Titans GM Rand Carthon. I'm Ryan Wilson. Rand, I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't figure out how many days there are till the 2026 NFL Draft because I need a minute. So I'm just going to stick with the With the First Pick logo here. How you hanging in there after your first draft with the likes of me?
No, it was great, man. It was good. You took real good care of me, brought me along, made me little bro, put your arm around me. So I appreciate all the help, man. I really do. All jokes aside, it was good. It was a great experience, and just being a part of it, seeing how the whole thing works. And so I've been enjoying myself.
No, it's been great for us as well. And I certainly had a great time from you. I'm glad I never believed I'd live in a world where I would be able to help you out, but I thought you were helping me out. So we're helping each other out. We're getting through this thing together. And I'll just let you know this. We worked pretty hard in the media because you didn't get back to the hotel room until 2:30 on Thursday night, Friday night. I don't know if you had that on your bingo card.
Nah, that wasn't on my bingo card. The only thing I'll say where you didn't look out for me is when you went on a solo mission and when it got the chocolate chip cookie and didn't look out for you, boy. So we'll work that part out next year.
Producer Sharon, when I tell you that cookie was as big as my head and I ate it all, I did Rand a favor. And I'll tell you this as well. When I dropped Rand off at the airport, I grabbed another one.
See how selfish he is, Sharon?
Let's do this. Let's start with we're working our way backwards from 32 to number one. The 32nd team is the draft we like the least. We don't hate any of these draft classes. If you fill most of your needs, we feel pretty good about the direction of the organization. But if we're going to rank them from the ones we love to the ones we like to the ones that left us with some questions, then that's how we'll approach this. So let's start 32, work our way down to our favorite. The one that left us with some questions at 32 for me, Rand, were the Cincinnati Bengals. We know they took Shamar Stewart at 17, and productivity-wise, those were the questions. You mentioned it over draft weekend, 4.5 career sacks, 1.5 sacks last season, but he looks the part, and they need help there. Demetrius Knight, the linebacker they got in round 2. He'll be 25 years old, but a really good player. They drafted another linebacker later. I thought they perhaps could have targeted safety. They do have some needs at safety. They didn't do that. And then they wrapped things up with Taj Brooks, the running back out of Texas Tech. So all in all, you okay with my ranking here of 32nd out of 32 teams for the Cincinnati Bengals?
Yeah, I am. And just for the fact of I'm not sure that they came away with plug and play starters, right? And especially with their first 2 picks. And we all know what Shamar Stewart is able to do and what he's capable of doing from an athleticism and body movement type of thing. He is more of an upside pick, right? So if you really hit on him, then you may have something here. However, like we talked about on HQ, we're talking about a guy who had 4.5 sacks. And typically, if you don't get the sacks in college, you're not getting them in the pros. And then you go with Demetrius Knight. What is Demetrius Knight's initial fit in this defense? Right? You still have Logan Wilson. You still have Jermaine Pratt. Now, I know the system is new with Al Golden coming in as your new coordinator, but where is he going to fit in initially in this defense? Are we talking about taking a guy in the second that's going to probably have to wait a year to be your starter, or is he going to beat out Demetrius Knight? Is he going to beat out Jermaine Pratt out the gate? Those are the questions we don't know.
Dylan Fairchild, the interior offensive lineman out of Georgia they took in round 3. This might be their best pick. I think he has a chance to start right away. But ideally, you want to hit on the first and second round picks. You don't want to wait till round 3 to find that guy. But we'll find out together. But for now, we had him ranked 32. Next up, at 31, I had the Cleveland Browns here. And we've talked to the quarterback situation a good bit here. Obviously, the Dylan Gabriel round 3, circle back in round 5 at pick 144 and get Shedeur Sanders. One of the things, and that was their last pick in this draft, by the way, one of the things that I thought they might do, Rand, is they didn't draft an edge rusher. Now, they got Mason Graham after that trade down, and they do deserve credit for trading down, getting a first next year, and getting an extra second-round pick this year. All those things I applaud. But I thought in addition to Mason Graham, if you wanted to get a player like a Braden Swinson, for example, at LSU, he was available in the 5th round when they took Shedeur. They also could have gotten a wide receiver. Someone like Jalen Royals could have been available around the range they took Dylan Sampson, the second running back they drafted. I do understand they have running back needs. What do you think about the Browns here, who I have ranked 31st?
I probably liked it just a smidge better But I still think with those first two picks, there were a little bit better value. Like I understand the pick of Mason Graham and what he can do and what he can bring to that defensive front, especially in Jim Schwartz's system. Just getting off the ball, attacking, and being disruptive. I think he fits that mold, but I don't think he's going to help improve the overall pass rush. Now, the Schlesinger pick in the second round for me again a little bit of a reach. And we liked him and have him. Some have him number one if they're off a ball linebacker, some number two. But my big question in this is, okay, where's the fit? Now I know JOK has had some injuries, and they don't know if he's going to be in or out of the lineup. But if he's healthy, where's the fit? Unless the plan is to move him to Mike because he is 6'3", 240 pounds and can run, which is still kind of a fit, in Schwartz's defense. Now, the Harold Fannin pick for me, I kind of like that one because now you're adding a tight end, a F tight end weapon, another tight end weapon that can give you some more 12 personnel looks. And then the two backs, again, we're talking about a wide zone system where you can put these young guys in and get some early production out of them. I'm not even going to talk about the quarterbacks. We'll let that one sort itself out in due time. But I like this class just a little bit better. I do think there were some questionable fits in there a little bit, but I just think the draft class in totality was a little bit better.
And the Harold Fannin pick is worth mentioning because that could be their version of finding their wide receiver. Because as you mentioned, he plays primarily in the slot. He can play outside. You can line him up a lot of different places, and perhaps he's even more versatile than a wide receiver they thought they could get there. Fair enough. I get that. And again, I didn't dislike the draft class, but we have to rank them all. Someone has to be last and next to last. Two spots from the bottom, the Los Angeles Rams. And part of this is just because they didn't have a lot of picks. They traded out of the first round with the Falcons, so they get a first-round pick next year. They get a points for that for sure. They drafted Terrence Ferguson at the top of their first pick in the second round, the Oregon tight end, who's a really good athlete. And the guys they got, I actually like. Josiah Stewart reminds me of Josh Uche, the edge rusher out of Michigan. He's a little undersized, but he's got twitch for days. And then their last two picks I'll point to, Chris Paul Jr., Pooh Paul, the off-ball linebacker at Ole Miss. I thought he would go higher than the fifth round. He fits what they do there. And then Kanate Mumfield, out of Pitt, went in round 7. If he had run 4 or 5 or better, he would have gone 2 or 3 rounds higher potentially. I talked to him at the Shrine Bowl, and his comp, my comp for him, was Deion Johnson out of the former Pittsburgh Steeler. And a lot of times my comps are off the mark, and you know this. Kanate said his mom was watching the Steelers one day. And she said, "Hey, you look just like that guy." So I got that one right. What do you think of this draft class?
Yeah, I feel the same way you do. And I'm just thinking about the Terrence Ferguson pick, and I had to go back in my Rolodex and them taking, because I know how much Sean McVay loves tight ends, right? He was a former tight end coach and when he was in Washington. And so that's kind of his forte, so to speak. But then I went back in my Rolodex, and his very first draft pick as head coach with Les as the GM was Gerald Everett out of South Alabama, and they took him 44th overall, which would help give him his Jordan Reed-esque tight end in his system. And with Tyler Higbee going into the final year of his contract and dealing with some serious injuries throughout his entire career, they need that type of player readily available for him. So I understand the Terrence Ferguson pick. But like you said, they traded away the first round pick and got a first, extra first for next year, I believe. And so that puts themselves well positioned because, again, this is going to come back to the quarterback and the availability of what Matthew Stafford's going to do next year will be available for him. So Les was back to his F those picks mantra, and hopefully it's setting him up for something good next year.
Yeah, next year is going to be interesting. While you were enjoying yourself last night in Nashville, I had to do a top 10 picks for the 2026 mock draft looking ahead for HQ. And we'll see what this quarterback class looks like next year. We'll see. It won't be what we saw in 2024. It should be a little deeper than this, but a lot can change. But to your point, we don't know what Matthew Stafford's future is going to be. And if they have that extra first round pick, and a couple of teams do have extra first round picks, including Cleveland Browns, that may be a situation, especially if some young man, last name Manning, decides to come out 8 or 9 months from now. Things could get pretty saucy. So we'll cross those bridges when we get to it. And by that, I mean in 2 days, because you and I are going to do a 2026 mock draft on this podcast. So break out the tape. But for now, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, We'll talk about the teams that are next on our list as we work our way from 32 all the way to 1. I'll give you a little sneak peek. Two of these teams are the NFC North, and we'll talk about them right after this. Welcome back to With the First Pick. We are ranking every single draft class, all 32 of them. We've got 3 off the board here. We're now at number 29, working our way from the ones we didn't necessarily love to the ones that we loved a lot. And for 29, for me, ran ahead the Green Bay Packers. They got Matthew Golden, pick 23. He's going to wear number 22. I understand as a wide receiver. I sort of love that. I like what they did. Savion Williams is an interesting running back / wide receiver option at 6'4", runs sub 4.5. He can move a little bit. Barron Sorrell gives you some juice off the edge. The next pick, they took Colin Oliver out of Oklahoma State, who could be eventually moved to off ball next to Edge Cooper. So they did some good things. I thought maybe they would think about a cornerback, and they didn't do that till round 7. But all in all, I sort of understand the direction of what they're doing there. But for me, they were still 29. What do you think about that?
No, that's fair. And I like the Matthew Golden pick for him. We've done it in the mock drafts. We went round and around about what they could do with that first one. And like you, I thought they would have targeted a corner, specifically sooner than they did, especially with a guy like Savon Revel lasting into the 3rd round, I believe, and him being available to him. That would have been a really good pick for them, especially if they plan to move forward with Jair Alexander. And, having a guy that, coming off a torn ACL, you're not forcing him in there, but you got a good replacement. But to hear you say that Golden is choosing to wear number 22, I'd love to hear the logic behind that. I'm sure it'll be a story here soon. But he is a great fit for what LaFleur wants to do, especially in that system, and the importance of having an extra receiver that's got speed and explosiveness.
You know what? Like Troy Polamalu wore 43. 43 isn't a super sexy number, but he made it that way for the safety position. So maybe 22 is the new, 11 for wide receivers.
Let's not push it.
Okay, fair enough. Can't wait till one of these receivers wear like 78. Really going to start sending the message. Next up for me, number 28 on my list, the Denver Broncos. Love Jahdae Barron at pick 20. We didn't really spend a lot of time talking about slot corner, perhaps, maybe outside corner. He can play both. We'll see what they want to do with him. But they have Riley Moss. Of course, they have Patrick Surtain the second. So they have a lot of choices there. R.J. Harvey at UCF in the 2nd round. I loved the way he played in college, and I think Sean Payton certainly is going to know how to get the most out of him. Love the picks of Savion Jones and Q Robinson in rounds 3 and 4 off the edge. And they didn't get a tight end, which I thought they may think about until round 7, and they didn't get an offensive lineman at all. And the only pick I really had a problem with was Pat Bryant, the wide receiver out of Illinois in the 3rd round. And that's only because he's a 4.61 guy. That doesn't mean he can't be successful at the next level. But when you talk about traits and measurables and all that, I thought he may have been available a little later. I had heard from some other teams that they were targeting around this range. So I get it. Either way, I had him ranked 28th among all 32 teams here.
Yeah, and again, I'm in lockstep with you there. It's just outside of, say, Jahdae Barron, it wasn't that super splashy name, in this class. And who knows? I know Sean Payton knows what he's doing. I've always had a ton of respect for George Payton and just how those guys go about their business. And they took Bo Nix at 12 last year and made everybody scoff, and we saw that worked out for him. So we'll see. I saw something on the net that had talked about the 2012 Seattle draft class, where they went Bruce Irvin in the 1st, Bobby Wagner in the 2nd, and Russell Wilson in the 3rd. And that draft class was given an F by some people, and we all seen how that's turned out. So we'll see. We'll know here in a couple of years.
And 2 of those guys are still playing, which is crazy to think about. I don't know who gave the F, but I'm just going to assume it's Pete Prisco. So, Pete Prisco, you need to apologize for what you did to Russ. All right, next up, 27th on our list here. One thing I should say quickly about the Broncos, they don't have a ton of needs. That's how good they've been in a post-Bo Nix world. And again, shout out to George and Sean Payton for doing the things they did. They went from a really bad football team to a team that has now their franchise quarterback, and they're just filling some minor holes, not some major holes. A major hole for the Vikings, and we'll find out together, was a wide receiver a quarterback. I'll get it right eventually. Drafted last year as well. J.J. McCarthy, who's now going to be the full-time starter. They got Donovan Jackson along the offensive line, and you were talking about in the hours leading up to the draft that it was going to be probably offensive line or defensive line. We thought safety made some sense. They didn't get a safety in this class, so maybe they felt okay about that. Ty Felton, the wide receiver, went in the third round. I really love Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, the defensive lineman out of Georgia. They got him in round 5. And Kobe King, the linebacker out of Penn State. Feels like a B-flow coming downhill linebacker who's going to make an immediate impact in certain packages. So they're ranked 27th, sort of in the same vein. Not super splashy, but I sort of understand what they were trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And they got guys that fit what they do and for the direction that they're trying to go. I think with only 4 picks, you only got so many things you could do anyway. And so I think they hit in their mind with their perceived needs and the direction that they're trying to take the needs. So with only 4 picks, I think they hit themselves right on target.
All right. I think we're going to take another quick break here, Producer Sharon, and we're going to keep this train rolling. 27 picks down. And we're starting to turn the tide, and we're getting to the point where we start to like these draft classes a little more. I'm a Steelers homer. I've heard that some people in the control room weren't happy with my grade about the Steelers. I reached out to one of our Steelers coworkers just now who is from Western Pennsylvania. She's married to an Ohio State alum. They're super pumped about Will Howard, so they're bringing the family together. So that's something we can talk about. But let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll return our attention to the New York Football Jets, who's 26th on the left. We'll talk about that right after this. Welcome back to With First Pick. We're working our way through every single draft class. We're ranking them from 32 all the way down to 1. We're up to 26. And this is right around the range where we start to like these draft classes a little more, and eventually we end up loving them. And this is where we come to the New York Football Jets at pick 26 here. Armand Membu at 7, the right tackle out of Missouri. Check. Line up next to Elijah Vera Tucker, opposite of Ola Fashanu, last year's first-round pick. And then they go in round 2 and get Justin Fields, a middle-of-the-field weapon ran, and Mason Taylor, Jason Taylor's son, the tight end out of LSU, and the athleticism is through the roof for him. Third round, they get Isaiah Thomas, a cornerback out of Florida State. He would have gone probably a full round and a half higher had he not run a 4.57 in the pre-draft process. I heard his GPS was much closer to 4.38, 4.44, that range. And maybe my favorite pick in this class is Malachi Moore for the Jets. Didn't test through the roof, but one of the smartest players at Alabama. It's going to be one of the smartest players in that defensive backfield for the Jets. The pick that I had a little hesitation with was Arian Smith. They took him at the top of the 4th. Track speed legit. Had 10 drops last year, so I don't know how that translates. What do you think about this Jets class?
Well, first off, I'm surprised you didn't have this at number 1 with your son Armand being drafted first. So I'm kind of shocked they're this far back. But no, I actually like this class. And like you said, and you called them out, the 2 players that stood out to me was Mason Taylor and Malachi Moore. Like those 2 guys are legit, like good football players. And we talked about it here on the show during the mock draft portion of is pick number 7 going to be too high for Jahdae Barron here as a potential Brian Branch type of player for Aaron Glenn's defense here. And then you go and get baby Brian Branch out of Alabama and Malachi Moore, who true football people love Malachi Moore as a football player. And like you said, the testing numbers aren't going to wow you, but true football enthusiasts know what this guy can do. And I expect this guy to actually be a starter for those guys fairly quickly.
Yeah, and they had needed safety. So, right, that's why we were having that Jahdae Barron conversation. But if you get Membu at the front and then someone like Malachi Moore later in the draft, that feels like a win for the New York Jets. Steve Wilkes, new defensive coordinator, by the way. And, of course, AG is the head coach and what he did in Detroit, bringing all that over to the Jets room on the defensive side of the ball. Next up for me at 25th on our list, Pittsburgh Steelers. And I was in my feelings for a day and a half or 2 days, and the more I thought about it, the more I felt better about what we were doing here in Pittsburgh. And I say we because, I'm part of the organization brand. Derek Harmon at pick 21. They desperately needed help along the defensive line. They have Keanu Benton, their former second-round pick from a few years ago, and he's been fantastic. And Cam Hayward is in his mid-30s, and he could probably play another 3 years, but at some point you have to think about life after him. And Derek Harmon is a grown man. Now, I like Kenneth Grant a little better, like Walter Nolan a lot better. Those young men were long gone, so I understand how different teams have different grades on players, and I'm all for that. Steelers in round 3, because the second-round pick was DK Metcalf, part of the trade to the Seahawks. In round 3, they took Caleb Johnson, the outside zone runner out of Iowa. I think they hope that he's going to be something like Le'Veon Bell was coming out of Michigan State. Michigan State, at the time, Le'Veon was a second-round pick. He played at 240 at Michigan State, if I recall correctly, ran and dropped about 20, 25 pounds and became the player he was in Pittsburgh. I don't think Caleb Johnson has that upside, but we'll see. We'll see. That's the whole point of this. Jack Sawyer was a home run Steelers pick in round 4. And then they got my guy Will Howard, the quarterback out of Ohio State, the national champion you see there. And I'm going to say this, Rand. I've talked myself into this. Will Howard at pick 185. 185 is the new 199 for these quarterbacks, baby.
And these were the ones you were waiting on. This is your team. And, we had those conversations all throughout the draft, sitting in the green room and as to what they were going to do. But I agree with you here. I'm a big Captain Jack fan. So love the pick and had been saying for a while that this guy just felt like an AFC North, player to me. And boom, there he is, winds up being in the AFC North. But to your point, on the back taken in the third round, and you were saying Le'Veon, I absolutely loved Le'Veon coming out. And Le'Veon's tape when he came out was the tale of 2 different years, right? The year before, he was really good. And his last year at Michigan State, he was trying to show everyone that he could make people miss, which turned people off because you had a big 240-pound guy that was in the open field trying to, juke and shake, and as opposed to lowering the shoulder. But we saw what Le'Veon became. He became, a first-team All-Pro and led the league in rushing and all that jazz. So hopefully they know what they're doing. I know Arthur Smith has a pretty decent track record in terms of the value of running backs. Having gotten the former BYU guy in the 5th round while he was in Atlanta, Tyler Algier, and turned him into a 1,000-yard rusher, when most people didn't see or understand the fit. So I'm going to trust those guys here and feel like trust that they have who they feel like fit their systems the best.
Yeah, and Caleb was actually getting some first-round buzz. Caleb Johnson was early in the college football season. And to follow up on your Le'Veon Bell story, Le'Veon didn't test well coming out. And sometimes it doesn't matter, especially at the running back position. You don't need your running backs to run 4.3. You see a lot of times guys who are 4.55 guys or even higher in the open field. Typically, you don't see guys high catching them. I'm pretty sure Derrick Henry was a 4.5-ish guy. I have yet to see anyone catch Derrick Henry. And when they get there, they still don't know what to do. So there's a lot to feel good about if you're a Steelers fan. You just take a deep breath, and that's what I did. All right, next up here, the Detroit Lions. And I like the Tyleik Williams pick. He had a hamstring injury at his pro day, but they're okay with that. I like the Tate Ratledge pick in round 2. So they got big on rounds 1 and 2, defensive line and offensive line. And Isaac Tesla was one of my guys in the draft process here. The tall slot receiver out of Arkansas by way of Hillsdale. But here's what I want to ask you about this draft, which I have 24th, Rand. The Tesla pick, they gave up 2 third-round picks next year to get him at pick 70. As much as I love Isaac, that feels sort of rich to me. So what do you think about that part of that draft class for Detroit?
No, it was definitely rich. It was definitely rich. But I'll say it this way. And I don't think you or I, if we were calling those shots, we would have done it. However, there's probably not a GM I would trust more than Brad Holmes when it comes to this draft process, because this is his wheelhouse and this is where Brad lives. And so I trust that there's something there that Brad sees. And going back to Tyleik Williams, you have to know and look at what they've done traditionally. They're going to always roll the dice on bigger men that can move. They, what was it, in 2023, they took the kid out of Western Kentucky, who most people had as a day 3 pick, and they took him in the 3rd round, who is still yet to see the field for varying reasons, but they value big men who are powerful and that can move.
The other thing about Brad Holmes is everyone thought that Matthew Stafford for Jared Goff was a fool's errand. It turns out Jared Goff is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Brad Holmes knows what's up. I also love the Dan Jackson pick in round 7. Coming downhill, Millsville out of Georgia, had a really good Senior Bowl, ran really well in the pre-draft process. Not a combine invite. That's okay. He got drafted. He's going to make that team as a special teams ace. All right, we're going to come back here, turn the corner. pick 23. We're going back to the NFC North. We'll talk about who that is right after this break. All right, Rand, we are down to team 23, as we rank all these draft classes, 32 all the way down to number 1. Let's go to the NFC North here, the Chicago Bears. And if you're asking for a letter grade, and I'll write about this for CBSSports.com on Tuesday morning, this is a B+ for me in terms of the Chicago Bears. Colston Loveland, home run. Luther Burden in round 2, home run. Ben Johnson is getting the weapons he wants for his young quarterback, Caleb Johnson, and the weapons that he had in Detroit before coming over. Ozzie Trapillo, the offensive tackle out of Boston College, adds some depth there. I love Shamar Turner, the defensive lineman out of Texas A&M in round 2 as well. I was a little curious about the Ruben Hippolyte pick, the Maryland linebacker, but he tested through the roof of his pro day, sub 4.5, 40-yard dash, sub 7-second 3-cone, and he comes downhill and he'll pop you. And a pick I really like, by the way, in round 5 is Zay Frazier, the cornerback out of UTSA. Reminds me a lot of Tyreek Stevenson, who's on that roster. So B+ for me, 23rd overall. What do you think about this draft class?
No, same. B+ for me as well. The Hippolyte pick, you have to know special teams coordinator Richard Hightower and what he's looking for. And he wants those tough linebackers that can get downfield. I know exactly how he's going to be used in their special teams. He will be a core 4 guy for them. And the fact that, and if I'm not mistaken, I want to say he ran 4.38 at the pro day. Hippolyte did, and so you can never discount that. And so you expect the Bears special teams to be bolstered with play like that. And then you look at the Ozzie Trapillo pick, like you said, a depth pick for them. And Ryan Poles went back to his alma mater at Boston College to do it, and Ryan was a former offensive lineman there, so he knows full well how that guy came up. But I just think as a whole, they did an excellent job of transitioning this draft class to what they're going to be moving forward. So I thought they did a really good job at attaching their picks with their scheme that they're going to be running moving forward.
Producer Sharon, apparently 4.38 recognizes 4.38. So make a note of that going forward. We'll see. But to start testing them on that. Next up, and by the way, we're only 10 picks into grading these from worst quotation mark down to the best. At pick 22 is where we turn the corner, and the rest of these are A-, A's, or A+. I thought these teams did exactly what they needed to do in terms of addressing needs. Now it's just a matter of watching for the next 3 or 4 years and seeing if they got the right guys. So that brings us to the New Orleans Saints here at 22. They're an A- for me if you want the letter grade. Kelvin Banks Jr., you had to find a replacement along the offensive line. Ryan Ramczyk has retired. Trevor Penning didn't get his 5th-year option picked up because he's, if we're being honest, struggled during his rookie deal, and we'll see what they do there. But Kelvin Banks Jr. provides them some protection. And then Tyler Shuck is at pick 40. He was QB3 in this draft class after Cam Ward, after Jackson Dart at 25 to the Giants, and then, of course, Tyler Shuck at 40. He'll be 26 years old in the fall. We've talked about all the long comings and shortcomings to death with this quarterback class. We'll see. Love the Vernon Broughton pick out of Texas, defensive lineman there. Jonas Sanker, the safety out of Virginia, also in round 3. No one talked about him during the draft process. He is a really good football player. Also a really good football player, Danny Stutzman, linebacker out of Oklahoma. He went in round 4. That feels like real value as well. And they got running back help in round 6. I mentioned Devin Neal out of Kansas. Give him some love here. Rand, what do you think about this draft class for the Saints here, ranked 22nd on our list?
Yeah, I felt the same way, and I'm glad you mentioned the Danny Stutzman pick. I've always been a fan of his. He's a football player, man. He understands what the offense is trying to do, how the offense is trying to attack. I think he's a 3-down linebacker. I think he's going to push very early to get on the field for those guys because Demario Davis is aging and probably entering the last year of his career, in the NFL. And playing opposite of him has been a bit of a revolving door. So imagine having a Danny Stutzman, who is really a Mike linebacker, learn under Demario Davis for a year, then take over. I think they're well positioned for the future. And Mickey Loomis, like we've talked about a lot on the show, he always drafts a year ahead of a need, which sets them up perfectly for next year.
And he didn't, your bold prediction was that they trade up. They didn't trade up or down. They say put this year, right?
Yeah, they did. My bold prediction was that he was going to trade back for the first time since becoming a GM in 2007. So He's still at his number of 26 trade ups, 0 trade backs.
26-0, baby. All right, next up, 21st on our list as we grade these guys. I gave this class an A-, but man, you can convince me that it should be higher than that. The Philadelphia Eagles, the rich get richer. I don't know how this team is not going to go undefeated next year. They won the Super Bowl, of course. Jahad Campbell just stared them in the face at 31. They traded up one pick with the Kansas City Chiefs and took him there. I mean, that we talk about Howie Roseman not taking off-ball linebackers in the first round. That changed, and when you watch Jahad Campbell play, you understand why. Andrew Makuba got safety help in round 2 out of Clemson, slightly undersized, like 185-ish, tested incredibly well, insanely smart, and he played well at Texas, then Clemson before that. I love that pick. Smile money, they got another off-ball linebacker, insane athlete out of Georgia in round 5. And then I'll mention my guy Kyle McCord and the quarterback in round 6. And they had 4 6th-round picks ran. And the other 6th-rounder I'll mention here, Cameron Williams, the right tackle out of Texas, played opposite Kelvin Banks Jr. at Texas. Developmental, but high athlete guy. Maybe should have returned to school. He didn't. Now he's in one of the best offensive line rooms in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, it's Howie must be living right for all these things to always go in his favor. But to your point, one of my favorite guys in this class was Makuba. That guy just smacks people, and he has no regard for his body. He's undersized, and you wouldn't know it by the way he plays. I just love watching him play football, and he'll make an immediate impact for that team, whether it's on defense or on special teams.
All right, next up, and now we're solely into the A grades, even though we're at number 20 as we count our way down to number 1. The Indianapolis Colts, Tyler Warren, layup at pick 14. JT Tuimoloau, layup at pick 45. I mean, they just checking boxes and getting better. Pick 80, Justin Wally, the cornerback out of Minnesota. A slot guy, maybe that's a little rich for some people. I'm fine with it. Jalen Travis in the 4th round, the tackle at Iowa State. I thought we weren't talking enough about that young man in terms of his developmental capabilities at the next level. And finally, the last name I'll mention here as we work our way through this class, in the 6th round, pick 189, they took Riley Leonard, who someone said, Rand, I think this is a perfect encapsulation of Riley Leonard. He's equal parts Anthony Richardson and what's his name? Daniel Jones, excuse me, the quarterback class. So they got 2 for 1 in terms of Riley Leonard in that QB room.
Here's what I'll say about Chris Ballard's class. I thought it was really cool that because we had heard he was trying to trade up potentially to get Tyler Warren or a tight end, and he was able to stand pat and get one. And then obviously JTT, like you said, they just check boxes and fill their needs. And this is going to be a well-rounded team. They just got to get the quarterback position right.
Right. And it could be a situation where they could be in the market for a quarterback. We talk about this quarterback class in 2026, and we'll have plenty of time to address that. But perhaps that's something we think about when we do this Thursday mock draft, looking ahead to the future. But for now, this is a fantastic draft class. Chris Ballard has to feel great about where they are. They just got to get the QB position where it needs to be, whether that QB is in the room now or not. We shall see. But we are now 20 picks in. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to head to AFC West and see how many former Michigan man Jim Harbaugh took for the LA Chargers, and we'll talk about that right after this. We're ranking every draft class from the 2025 NFL Draft, and we're down to 19 on our list. And Rand, I'll just give you a little spoiler alert here. The next 4 teams we talk about all had A grades for them. Hard to find anything wrong with what they did in terms of the players or the depth they addressed. Let's go to LA. The Los Angeles Chargers here, number 19 on our list. Amari Hampton in round 1. Najee Harris is on a 1-year deal. J.K. Dobbins is no longer there. He feels exactly like what Jim Harbaugh is looking for to help out his quarterback and Justin Herbert. They got a wide receiver, which they needed in Trey Harris. Big physical downfield target out of Ole Miss. Jamari Caldwell in round 3, the defensive lineman out of Oregon. He didn't look like Derek Harmon getting off the bus, but he played like a lot of times I wish Derek Harmon did. He is a bowling ball coming downhill. And then I'll mention Oronde Gadsden the second. Obviously, his dad played for the Miami Dolphins for a long time, a wide receiver. He's a tight end, 245-ish, but he is long. He is relatively physical for the way he's built, an F guy in terms of that he plays in the slot, but you can line him up anywhere. I love what they did there. And I'll mention another guy they drafted whose dad played in the league, R.J. Mickens out of Clemson. His dad, Ray, played in the league for a long time as well. Sixth round, pick out of Clemson at the safety position. He's a really good player who could also get some run early on. What do you think about this class?
No, I felt the same way. It was an A. And, a lot of us, we didn't have running back being mocked there and probably should have. However, for them to get a Marion Hampton there at pick 22, and like you said, this is an absolute great fit for Greg Roman and for Jim Harbaugh and their system. Just a guy that's going to hit it and get downhill and attack those creases. And I expect him to have, even with Najee being there, I expect him to have a J.K. Dobbins, type of year, being able to, be the lead guy, if you will. And if you know anything about Jim Harbaugh and his thought process, he's going to take a flyer on an athletic tight end in those later rounds. And he has a high hit rate. Him at being a former quarterback, he just, for whatever reason, he has an eye for being able to hit that tight end position. And so I think Oronde Gass is in a good spot for him.
All right, next up, the Miami Dolphins. They are 18th on our list, another A draft for us. Kenneth Grant at 13. If he had fallen to the Steelers, I would have been certainly fine with that. And then they traded up to get Jonas Avenai at pick 37 in round 2. Played right tackle at Arizona. I think he can play right tackle. They'll probably start him inside. I like that pick a lot as well. And next pick wasn't until round 5. They went all defense in round 5. Round 6, they got Ollie Gordon, who doesn't feel like a Mike McDaniel type back in that he's a between the tackles bruiser. But I would imagine they're going to find a way to use him. And the last name I'll mention here, Rand, Quinn Ewers, 7th round pick. If I told you that was going to happen 2 years ago, you would have a hard time either believing me or wouldn't imagine what would happen to Quinn Ewers to find him in this spot. But it feels like a pretty good landing spot if he can just ever get healthy.
Yeah, and it's a great landing spot for him because he's a guy that throws on time, especially when he has time. And if you look at Mike McDaniel's offense, it is played within the numbers. And so that is Quinn Ewers' game, being able to throw those accurate balls across the middle. And so I like the fit. Now, the one fit that I thought was a little bit questionable, in terms of them being a heavy outside zone fit was the Jonas Avenai pick, especially having Austin Jackson at right tackle, kicking him inside the guard, which I'm pretty sure they're going to do. I'm just interested in seeing how that fit is. Now, I will kind of lean back on the history of we were all in San Fran when we took Aaron Banks out of Notre Dame in the 2nd round, and everyone questioned the fit there. So maybe I'm a little wrong, but I'm interested to see how he's going to adjust to this wide zone system.
All right, next up, 17th on our list, another A grade for me, the Seattle Seahawks. Not quite the zigging and zagging that John Schneider does when we think he's going to go one way and he goes the other. I won't call it chalk. Gray Zabel in round 1, we knew they had some interior offensive line needs, and he's going to be a grade A teammate from day 1. And then in day 2, they got the guy that we thought they might try to take in the middle of the 1st round there, safety Nick Emanwari. They traded up to get him, and I can't tell you how much I love that pick. Athletic tight end to go along with Noah Fant, Elijah Arroyo out of Miami in round 2 as well. And then Jalen Milroe, QB in Mike McDonald's system. I'm curious to see how this works out. They traded Sam Howell, so Jalen Milroe is going to have an opportunity early on. Got some wide receiver help on day 2, and Torrey Horton, had he been healthy, he probably goes a little early. And then they got one of my favorite players in this draft class that I haven't really talked a lot about after the Shrine Bowl, Ricky White III out of UNLV. Didn't test well, but if you need someone to block you a punt, Ricky White III is your guy. He had 2 against Syracuse last year in 1 game. What do you think about this overall draft class for Seattle?
Same. I thought it was an A. And, I know you love it just because, Nick Emanwar or Nick Eman Wilson, if you want to say,
thank you. There it
was
is.
taken. It's another one of your guys. But like you said, those first 4 picks are guys that's going to come in and immediately contribute. And I know when you say, well, wait a minute, is Jalen Milroe going to really contribute? Yes. They took this guy for a reason. And especially having a defensive-minded head coach, they're going to have packages for him to work in as some part of the field. And again, my early comp was if you liked him as a quarterback, he felt like a Malik Willis type, just with physical attributes. But if you love the football player, then this guy could do some Taysom Hill things for you just because of his explosiveness and dynamic ability with the ball in his hands. So you can get creative now with your offense. And with Clint Kubiak in this offense, having spent time obviously with his dad, being an offensive coordinator and head coach. But in recent years, spending time with Kyle Shanahan and understanding how to utilize your weapons and how to get your best 11 on the field, I expect him to do that with Jalen Milroe.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. Absolutely. Finally, in our list here, as we reach the halfway point, number 16, the Arizona Cardinals. And man, Monty Ossenfort, he appears to know what he's doing. I went back and looked at my grades last year. I gave him an A+ for what they did. That was Marvin Harrison Jr., Darius Robinson, Max Melton, Trey Benson to start that draft. This time around at 16, don't be fooled by the ranking quotation marks. I still give him an A. Walter Nolan at 16, we thought they would perhaps target interior offensive line or maybe cornerback. Well, guess what they did in round 2? They got a first-round talent in Will Johnson. Then in round 3, they got an edge rusher in Jordan Burch, who looks like Darius Robinson getting off the bus, so we sort of know where they're going in that sense. Got some real value in round 5 with Denzel Burke, the cornerback at Ohio State. And the round before that, they got his teammate, Cody Simon, the linebacker at Ohio State, who, again, is insanely smart and a fantastic football player who finished strong for the Buckeyes. What do you think about this draft class, Rand?
Yeah, I felt like Monty did his thing with this one. Think about it. If Will Johnson is healthy and tested, Will Johnson could go 16 and you still get him at 47. And I think the sleeper in this whole class is Jordan Burch, because I think if you just go physically off of what's in this guy's body, he should have been a first-round pick. Now, for whatever reason, he hadn't tied it all together and pulled it all together. But when he turns it on, he has a chance to really make some things happen for him. And because he's so versatile and his size and his mass, like he's an edge guy, but he's like 290. And so now will Jonathan Gannon be creative and maybe put him in some 4-eye situations, which will then make the guard have to make an athletic set on a guy like this and give this guy a two-way go to win. They can do some real, especially with what they've done in recent times. In their drafts with the edge position, they can get really creative and move this guy around and create some mismatches. He just has to step up and accept the challenge.
Yeah, and Darius Robinson looks the same size and weight. He just has to get healthy. And then you have 2 guys on your edge rush positions creating havoc, and there's no sort of relief for right or left tackle. All right, we're halfway through this thing. Let's take a quick break, and we'll reset here and make our way down the stretch for 15 through number 1 right after this. All right, Rand, we are halfway through this, ranking every single draft class from the 2025 NFL Draft. We are now down to number 15th on our list. And again, that halfway means average. It doesn't in this case. These are A's for me until notified otherwise. The Washington Commanders, under new leadership at both GM and head coach, continue to crush it. Jaden Daniels last year, okay, layup, I get it. This year, pick 29 to get Josh Connerly Jr., the tackle out of Oregon. Played left tackle in college. We'll see where he ends up in Washington, whether it's on the right side at right tackle or maybe even right guard while Sam Cosmi gets healthy from the ACL he suffered. Trey Emerson, round 2. He had first-round talent. Jackson Dart told us that was the best SEC cornerback he had faced during his time at Ole Miss, and that stands out. He also stands out physically because he's exactly the opposite of what Emmanuel Forbes was, their former first-round pick for a few years ago. And I'll mention round 4, Jalen Lane, the wide receiver out of Virginia Tech. 5'10", slot guy, 4.34, and oh, by the way, he has return ability. A for me, Rand. What'd you think about number 15 on our list here?
Yeah, same for me. You know, I'm a big Josh Connerly fan, and I think he'll play right tackle early, especially considering they just traded and got Laramie Tunsil, who will be their left tackle. And we'll see if Connerly is the left tackle of the future, because I do think he has the ability to play left tackle. And one thing I want to say, because we've talked about some of these slot corners that we see as slot corners, you know, being drafted where they are. Slot corner is becoming a real premium position, you know, in this league. And so you're going to start to see these guys being taken in the 3rd, and depending on their ability, maybe some into the 2nd, because you play so much of sub defense. That's nickel, that's dime, that's penny, that's dollar, whatever the case may be. And so there's a premium on having these guys, because if you look at what these guys are making in the league now, I think the highest paid nickel is making $13 million a year. So you're going to start seeing these guys taken higher. And I'm drawing a blank on the name, but the running back that they took in the 7th round, like, that is going to be an absolute great pick for them. I know he was really, really coveted in the analytic community. I had one team reach out to me during the draft when because I think they were targeting him as an undrafted free agent, and when the Commanders took him, I got a text from that team saying, "I can't believe your boy AP took my guy." But so that's going to end up being a really good fit because that guy, when you watch him run, I joke and I said, someone asked me what's my comp, and if you know who this is, it'll make sense. I said Ricky Baker. And so for those that don't know, Ricky Baker was a running back on USC in the movie Boys in the Hood. So if you want to look at something, go look at the highlight tape of Morris Chestnut's character, Ricky Baker, and that's how the running back that the Commanders took in the 7th round, that's how he runs. That guy was electric.
Did they actually show footage of Ricky Baker running in the movie? I'm trying to remember.
Oh, yeah. In the scene when the recruiter from USC came over to the house, had the big floor model TV and the VHS, and he popped it in and showed. I still, to this day, I want to know who the real running back was that was actually running, in those clips, because that guy looked like Reggie Bush out there.
Man, that's disrespectful to Morris Chestnut. Could have been him. Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt is the running back you're talking about. 1 year at Arizona, but only played in one game prior to that. He was at University of New Mexico. He was at the Shrine Bowl, and a lot of folks were very interested in him. So low mileage, and then Adam Peters, who you mentioned, got him in the 7th round as opposed to having to fight with 31 other teams to get him as a PFA. So another win by Washington late in the draft. I'm glad you mentioned him because he has a chance to be really fun. All right, next up on our list, another team that got an A grade from us at number 14, the New England Patriots. And finally, they took an offensive tackle. They've been taking offensive linemen for the last few years. They got someone to man the left tackle position in Will Campbell. And his interview after getting drafted was a fun watch. This man is all about football and nothing else. And I think that has to make Drake May very happy, Mike Vrabel very happy. In round 2, they got another young man that's all about football, and Trey Henderson, the running back at Ohio State. A little fire and ice to go with Ramondre Stevenson there. Kyle Williams is 5'11", played primarily outside of Washington State as the wide receiver, their 3rd-round pick. But as you just talked about, Rand, I'm interested to see how they use him, whether they push him inside to the slot, and how his usage will be, because they do need some electric weapons for Drake May. And the last name I'll mention, the round 3 pick, their other one, Jared Wilson, the center out of Georgia. I had a 3rd-round grade on him. He went in the 3rd round. He'll have a chance to play right away. But they had 11 picks. And they used all 11, and I would not be surprised if 9 or 10 of these guys end up making the final roster.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I expect all 11 to make it. One thing you'll know about a Mike Vrabel team and what Mike is going to want to do moving forward, he's going to want to accumulate as many top 100 picks as possible. And I want to say they had 4 to 5 picks in the top 100 this year, which is the place that he wants to dwell. The Will Campbell pick to me is just going to be Jake Matthews to Atlanta. You just plug and play him, and that guy will be there for the next, 10, 12 years. My one critique that I'd like to see New England do is add some size at receiver. I feel like all their receivers are, under 6 feet. They may have 1 or 2 guys that are 6 feet or maybe a little above, but give Drake May some bigger weapons, some bigger targets to, and that'll give him a little more room for error when he's throwing the ball in terms of catch radius. And so I feel like over these last couple of drafts, they've drafted the 5'10", 5'11", 5'9" guys. It's probably time to start giving them some bigger weapons.
Yeah, Nick Caserio took that advice to heart, the former Patriots front office guy, because Houston is my next team to talk about here at number 13, also in a draft. Jaden Higgins, 6'4", wide receiver. He'll be lining up opposite Nico Collins, over 6'1", maybe 6'2", wide receiver out of Michigan, and we know what he did as he grew into that role in Houston. And then they got the slot guy. They got Jaden Higgins' teammate, Jalen Noel, the wide receiver, has some return ability. And then Jalen Smith, they just drafted all the Jalen's, cornerback out of USC, undersized slot guy, but he's a really good player. They did trade up for Woody Marks, the running back out of USC. I actually love Woody Marks. I don't know if the price was prohibitive for most folks, but clearly Houston felt good about it. And they also drafted Graham Mertz. I'll mention him there as a developmental quarterback in round 6. What do you think about this class, Rand?
I felt the same way you did. I think both of the Iowa State guys, they need to pay a commission to Hutchinson, who's already there, a former Iowa State guy. I'm pretty sure they were so pleased with him in terms of what he brings to the table that they were like, let's go get 2 more to give him another weapon. But there's clearly a commitment to making sure that CJ Stroud is successful. And that was one of their offseason plans, was to better protect him. I think he was the second most sacked quarterback last season, right? And then now you go get him some weapons, some bigger targets. And so I like this draft for Caserio and D'Amico Ryans.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to head back to the NFC South, and we're also talking about the Kansas City Chiefs and how we graded their draft class. We'll do all that right after this. All right, we're ranking every single draft class from the 2025 NFL Draft. Frank Carthon, Ryan Wilson here. We are down to number 12 on our list here, working our way down to number 1. And shout out to Director Corbin, Ricky Baker, actually Kevin Hicks on the TV screen. So Kevin Hicks played at Washington State, was from LA. We're here to answer questions that nobody asked, Ryan. So let's get to number 12 here on our list. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So we're headed to the NFC South. Emeka Egbuka at 19. Grand slam. We didn't spend enough time talking about Emeka Egbuka during the pre-draft process because we were in love with Ted McMillan and Matthew Golden and all the tight ends. I understand that, but you and I both have used the term professional receiver. That is Emeka Egbuka. In the second round, they get Benjamin Morrison, the cornerback out of Notre Dame. Had he been healthy, he's almost certainly a top 32 pick. So clearly they thought enough of him medical-wise to take him in round 2. Round 3, another cornerback, Jacob Parrish, undersized but incredibly physical. And I'll mention one last name here, round 7, Tez Johnson, only 155 pounds. He didn't run particularly well in terms of the time speed and the 4.5s, but no one could cover him at the Senior Bowl. No one could cover him over the course of the season for Oregon. I absolutely love this pick at 235 in this draft.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a really good pick for him. But I want to go back to Emeka Egbuka. And we started hearing late that if a certain receiver was there for them, that they would take a receiver, because we had mocked, because just looking at their situation, an outside backer or potentially an inside backer for him. But we started hearing late that receiver was very much in play for them there. And what a perfect fit for them, especially with Chris Godwin coming off of a dislocated ankle, and he will fill a very, very similar type role for them because all that is required of Chris Godwin within the offense. And we've talked about it, at odds length. So I think that was an absolute great pick for him. And then to get Benjamin Morris in the second round, a guy that would have been in contention for being in the first round had he been healthy, it just feels like a Todd Bowles type of corner that's going to be big and physical and is going to be able to help you in run support. And putting that guy opposite of Jamel Dean, like, you're going to be, those receivers in the NFC South are going to be in boxing matches out there on the edge.
It's funny you mentioned that because we're going next to the Carolina Panthers at number 11 on our list, another team that I gave an A to. And Dave Canales, Dan Morgan, they prepared for the boxing match because at 8th overall, they took Ted McMillan. The last year was Xavier Legette in the first round. This year is Ted McMillan. And then on the defensive side of the ball, where they needed to get better at edge rush and younger, Nick Scorton in round 2 out of Texas A&M, then Princely Umanmielen, who feels more like a designated pass rusher right now, but we'll see. He has all the tools you want for a successful career as an edge rusher. Took him out of Ole Miss in the 3rd round. Got Latham Ransom, the safety. I'll mention his name. Fantastic player on the back end for Ohio State. And then they got more juice at the end of the draft. Mitchell Evans, the inline tight end, to go with J.T. Sanders, who they drafted out of Texas last year, more of an F player at tight end position. And then finally, they wrap things up with Jimmy Horton Jr., another undersized, juiced-up slot receiver who came by way of Colorado.
For me, you talk about when you say John Schneider usually zigs where everyone else would zag. To me, this pick of Ted McMillan, or excuse me, T-Mac, I don't want to disrespect him and call him Tet. He doesn't like to be called Tet. But for Ted Aurora to go here at 8, which the entire world, us included, had Jalen Walker here slotted in the entire time. They had this pick queued up for themselves, and no one probably saw it coming. And so I like this pick for him to give Bryce Young another weapon, a big down the field weapon that he can throw and give a chance in those contested areas. And so I really like this pick. And then to go back-to-back edge rushers, for these guys at a time when you have an aging Jadeveon Clowney who's on the end of the last year of his deal, and then you have DJ Wanham who's also on the last year of his deal. So you have 2 guys that can come in and that can sit and play in a rotation early but then will eventually be your guys moving forward. So I like what they did there with these first 3 picks.
Man, this team feels like it's turned the corner, and if Bryce Young can continue to put it together, they might be a fun watch in that division. That could be wide open. Tampa Bay always wins it, and we don't give them enough credit, but it feels like they're closing the gap. The Panthers are number 10 on our list. The Kansas City Chiefs, they're a little ahead of the Philadelphia Eagles on our list here, so maybe that's a good sign. They didn't quite play a very competitive game in the Super Bowl, but Josh Simmons, the offensive tackle out of Ohio State, goes 32nd overall. If he's healthy, he might be a top 12 pick, maybe even higher than that. So they needed offensive tackle help, and they got it. Maybe they don't have to play him right away. I think Andy Reid said they expect him to be healthy. We'll find out together. Omar Norman-Lott, defensive lineman out of Texas, insanely juiced up, and I love the idea of him standing next to Chris Jones, number one, and then him getting after it next to Chris Jones once they start playing some ball here. Round 3, they traded up for Noel Williams, a cornerback out of Cal. Didn't spend a lot of time talking about him in the pre-draft process, and we should have. Had a fantastic Shrine Bowl, played fantastic during the course of the season. He went up toe-to-toe with Miami and Cam Ward when they came out to Cal, and I think he made his name for himself in part because of that game. Great value for the Chiefs with Jalen Royals, the wide receiver out of Utah State in round 4. Jeffrey Bausa, the linebacker out of Oregon in round 5. And then Brashard Smith, the guy I couldn't quit talking about out of SMU, the running back / wide receiver. He played wide receiver at the U. They got him in round 7. All guys that are going to make this team, it feels like, Rand, and have a chance to contribute pretty early on.
Yeah, and my 2 favorite picks for this class is you get Josh Simmons, who is arguably the best tackle in this class. You get him at 32, right? And, okay, you got lucky. He was injured. We don't know how healthy he's going to be. All right, cool. But my next favorite pick in this class was Brashard Smith in the 7th round. Like, we're talking about a guy who is making a transition to running back and did it very well and played his butt off this year. And he's going to fill that Jet McKinnon type role. And we know how valuable Jet McKinnon was to that offense when he came in, was that 3rd down guy. And with Andy Reid's creative mind, you have a running back / wide receiver. And I'm not comparing him to Christian McCaffrey, but you can use him in that same type of way in terms of, are they playing 11 personnel? Or, what is the personnel package going to be if you motion this guy from the backfield to the slot and who's going to cover him? And so it should be fun to watch.
Yeah, one of the concerns with the Chiefs last year was that they were injured at the wide receiver position and weren't quite as electric as that perhaps they needed to be. That has all changed. Those guys get healthy with the additions they have here in this draft class. This offense is going to somehow look even more explosive than it did in the past. So, good luck with that if you're in the AFC West. All right, let's take a quick break here, Rand. When we come back, we're inside the top 10. The rest of these are A's and A pluses, and a lot of examples of good teams getting better and teams that needed to get better getting a lot better. So we'll talk about all that right after this. All right, we're ranking every single draft class from the 2025 NFL Draft. We just talked about Team 10, the Kansas City Chiefs. 2 teams trying to catch them in the AFC are inside the top 10. And we're going to start at number 9 with the Baltimore Ravens. And I gave them an A. I don't know why I didn't give them an A+, because they got Malachi Starks Carthon, your guy, at 27. You're going to put him next to Kyle Hamilton? That's unfair. Then they got Mike Green at pick 59, a first-round talent who had some off-field concerns, but he is a first-round edge rusher, top 15 type edge rusher. If he gets things right off the field. Emory Jones Jr. in round 3 played right tackle at LSU, has a chance to start at guard. We'll see whether it's the left guard or right guard position and how it shakes out for the Ravens as we get through the process there. But athletic player who bookended Will Campbell and was really good at times. And I'll also mention they drafted the kicker, so we'll see how that works out. And got LeJonte Wester, a speedy slot receiver who can also play outside out of Colorado. They got him on day 3. What do you think about this class, Rand?
Listen, first of all, they had 11 draft picks, and they used all 11. So let's give them credit. They had 11 picks, and they used all 11. But for me, you could just stop after getting my oldest son, Malachi Starks Carthon, in 1, and then being able to get Mike Green in 2. That draft class was a win with those 2 in particular. So you got me there. I think it should have been A+. They would have been higher for me.
Yeah, and fair enough. I can't push back too hard on that. I mentioned the Ravens as a team that needed to get better to chase down the Chiefs, and they've done that. At number 8 is a team that needed to get better at a lot of places, starting the quarterback position. That's the New York Giants, also an A for me. They traded back into the first round for Jackson Dart at 25. We'll see who Jackson Dart ends up being. I have no issue with trading back into the first round and not giving up a ton to get a quarterback that you like. Let's see how that plays out. At number 3, Abdul Carter, layup. You don't have to know anything about football or even be from this planet to make that pick. So that you don't get credit for that, but that's the right pick. Darius Alexander in round 3 at pick 65. He is 25 years old. I love Darius Alexander. This feels like a steal because you're going to line him up next to Sexy Dexy. He balled out at Toledo. Then he went to the Senior Bowl and balled out against guys that are Power 4 guys and looked exactly to be the same player. And the name, let's start with this guy because you're running back. Cam Scadaboo, what type of impact is he going to have coming into New York with Tyrone Tracy in that backfield?
Oh, it'll be a nice 1-2 punch that you'll get started. You'll now have a banger. You'll have a banger for the latter part of the year when the weather starts to turn and you need those bigger bodies to lean on people, and you need to have a 4-minute offense to extend drives and to close out games, and he'll give you that body type. And because of his toughness and his wiring, you'll now have a guy that could also contribute on anywhere from 2 to all 4 of the key phases on special teams. So I like that pick for them there as well.
All right, what about the Jackson Dart move? You okay with coming up for 25 for a guy that most people, myself included, had graded as a second rounder?
Yeah, and I get it because they have to walk away with the quarterback, right? That New York market would not have allowed them to not walk away with a quarterback at some point, and especially with other teams being positioned to come take a guy that obviously they coveted Jackson Dart, and so they had to put themselves in position to get it. But I want to go back to the Abdul Carter one real quick. And I'm just thinking about my man Shane Bowen, the defensive coordinator. Like, he has an embarrassment of riches at this point. And I'm sure like Shane is like a kid in the candy store now on the amount of creative packages he can come up with to get all 3 of these talented edge rushers on the field at the same time.
And by the way, those group of guys that you're talking about is going to make life easier for any quarterback, whether it's Russ, Jameis, or the rookie Jackson, should he get on the field. And that's sometimes a good place to start. All right, number 7 on our list here. And look, Jerry Jones catches a lot of flack for some of the things he does or does not do. Shout out to that organization for this draft because they got Tyler Booker at pick 12, starter, day 1, guard out of Alabama. Donovan Ezeraku at pick 44. A lot of first-round buzz about him. 248-ish is what he played at, and he got better against the run as the season went on for BC, but he is absolutely electric as a pass rusher. You talked earlier about Suvone Revel, the cornerback out of ECU, tore his ACL early last fall. Might have been a first-rounder had he been completely healthy, lasted until pick 76. And then they got your other guy, running back Jaden Blue Carthon out of Texas, who is an absolute burner, and he provides a little fire and ice, as we like to say, in that backfield for Dallas.
And again, like we talked about this on HQ the other night, like I don't think the draft has ever been an issue for Dallas. I think it's just been about being able to retain these guys and then make moves outside of the guys that they already have. And so I think that's what's been the issue. But again, another home run draft, for Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones, and Will McClay, and those guys are really working well together. And again, you have 3 guys in Tyler Booker, Donovan Ezeraku, and Suvone Revel, who are all first-round talents, and you're able to get those guys with your first 3 picks in those first 3 rounds. Like that's crushing it. So this would have been an A+ for me. And then, like you said, to go get Jaden Blue, the explosive third down change of pace guy that does not allow the first man to bring him down, I put him down as my king of bip because he can bip and make you move and make you miss. And so this was an A+ for me. And for me, I probably would have had this within my top 5 or top 3.
Fair enough. And when Tyler Booker said after he was drafted that his job is to take the soul from the person he's blocking and make them not want to play football anymore. If that was the only pick they made and then just traded all the other picks, that still probably should have been an A+. That's how good Tyler Booker feels like he's going to be. He is so good. All right. That's it. We have 26 picks in the books in terms of how we have these guys graded. We got 6 more to go. We'll take a quick break when we come back here. Number 6, I'll give you a little sneak peek, Rand. Jacksonville Jaguars. How about that? They're doing some good things down there in Jacksonville. New administration. So let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about Jacksonville and then talk about our top 5 right after this. All right, we're ranking all 32 draft classes from the 2025 NFL Draft. We are down to number 6. That brings us to Duval County. I'll let you do the Liam Cohen Duval if you want to, Rand.
Duval.
You crushed that one, Sharon. So, hey man, no one's going to care about that.
I couldn't make my eyebrows roll like he made his, but
you know what though? No one's going to care about it if this draft class hits like we think it has a chance to hit. And I gave this an A, and they're right on the cusp of an A plus. And they got Travis Hunter. They traded up to number 2 from number 5, and they gave a first-round pick next year to do it. And I still don't care. And I'm going to tell you what they got in terms of the draft compensation compared to their draft partner in Cleveland Browns. So the draft picks they got were Travis Hunter. They got another pick from Cleveland that turned into Bashal Tootin, the running back out of Virginia Tech, and then Ryan Lane out of Navy, who's going to be a special teams demon, and he can play safety, in the box safety. Cleveland got Mason Graham, and they used the picks they got from Jacksonville to also get Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson this year, both running backs. So you could question whether that was the best use of those picks. And then that 2026 first rounder. But back to Jacksonville, Wyatt Milum in round 3. He's going to be a starting guard probably from day one. I talked about Tootin. They drafted 2 linebackers. This feels like linebacker U, but I think they're going to replace the guys they drafted previously with the other administration. And then finally, got to bring it back to my guy from Syracuse, LaQuint Allen, the 20-year-old running back. They love him there as well, and he provides some third down ability as a pass catcher coming out of that backfield.
Yeah, so shout out to my man James Gladstone. JG, we worked together when he first broke into the league with the Rams in 2016. And the one thing that I respect about this draft class is that they just went for it. You know, where most time first time GM, first time head coaches, you're trying to make the safe, logical pick. And, you know, he tapped into his inner Samuel Lester Snead and again went with the F those picks mantra and said, hey, I'm swinging for it out of the gate. Who knows how this thing is going to end for him, you know, but he went for it out of the gate, and I respect that. And to go and get a player like Travis Hunter is something like, again, something we've never seen. And you essentially get a twofer, right? You get a twofer, and you get a guy that I'm pretty sure they're going to play on offense primarily, and then he'll work in some on defense. And so I respect the pick, and it was a great draft, even if you just do that. But then to get value throughout this roster. Now let's throw their last year's record out of the window, because they have a talented roster. They just need the right person there to bring it all together. And I channel back to our time at the Rams with Jeff Fisher. We had a talented roster, and you look at all the picks we accumulated, and then Sean McVay comes in and gives it that desired structure. And then in 1 year, when you go from a team picking in the top 5 to a playoff team. And so hopefully this is what Liam Cohen can do for this Jacksonville roster, because there's plenty of talent down there in Jacksonville to win with.
So you work with Liam and James in LA, and you work with this. Oh, you didn't?
No, I didn't work with Liam. We just missed each other. We just missed each other, but I did work with James.
Okay. Well, then Liam's going to have some real issues with you making fun of him saying Duval. That's a conversation for another time, though. You did work with this crew, though, San Francisco. That's next on our list. This is now the rest of these picks inside the top 5, all A pluses. And I'm curious about this draft class and getting your perspective on it, because you texted me when they took C.J. West, and I'll let you tell me who you feel like he's going to be once he gets to the league. Their 4th-round pick out of Indiana, defensive lineman. It started with Mykel Williams at pick 11, and we heard John Lynch say he thought he wanted to trade up. He thought he might be gone by then. That's how much I love Mykel Williams. Alfred Collins, the defensive lineman, in round 2. Nick Martin, and I've been saying this for weeks, maybe months, if he were 2 inches taller and 15 pounds heavier, he might have been a first-round pick. He gets after it. I love the way he plays. They got Curtis Rourke in round 7, the quarterback out of Indiana by way of University of Miami, and we'll see if he's the next Brock Purdy. But I wanted to ask you about the 3 defensive linemen they took at the top, and then C.J. West, because our buddy Lee J. Dusbo, who played for Robert Saleh, didn't love the fit of these players. Do you agree with that?
No, so Lee J. was texting me as well and was like, hey, man, we're kind of getting away from the scheme, you know, of what we've traditionally known that front to be. But if you go back and you look where the 49ers struggled last year, and they struggled in their run defense. And so one thing that you know that the 49ers will always do is they will always use resources to make a correction, right? So if you go back and you look prior to, we had a receiving core that wasn't overly tough or didn't have dynamic ability to run after the catch. And then we go and draft a guy named Debo and we bring him in, and then it changed the tone of what that receiver room came to be. And so they were always willing to make those changes, and to take these defensive linemen was the sign that they were making it. So if you look at Michael Williams, what is he? He's big, he's long, he's physical, he resets the line of scrimmage. Then you look at big Alfred Collins, who in my mind is a freak. He is an athletic freak. And when he gets with Chris Kocurek is he's one of the few coaches that I will say can get it out of a guy. And so this is a big physical man that can reset the line of scrimmage as well. And then CJ West is a carbon copy of DJ Jones, who's now with the Denver Broncos, who I think we took in the 6th round of the 2017 draft, a short fire hydrant guy. Now I do think DJ is quicker and more explosive in terms of attacking gaps. But for the fans watching this, if you want to go look at measurables and look at speeds and arm lengths, like these guys' numbers mirror themselves. And that's what I sent Ryan after the pick, and I said, this is their DJ Jones.
So they have a plan. Even DJ doesn't need to be worried.
No, not at all. And again, you have Robert Saleh back now. You still have Chris Kocurek there in the building. You still have John. You still have Kyle. There is a plan. And, let's throw in R.J. Gillen, one of their new personnel gurus, a guy that understands and who's been with this group since they first came in. So these guys are always aligned because they know exactly what the coaches are looking for. Now, again, the scheme evolves and it changes, and it's going to change, right? Because the scheme was initially a Seattle-esque type defense when Saleh first got there. And then it tweaked and became more wide 9 type concepts when you brought Kocurek in. So they've evolved the scheme, and this is just another evolution of it.
All right. Well, I'm going to keep that A+ then. Next up, another A+ for me. Again, another team that actually traded a first-round pick, a future first-rounder, to get back into this draft class. The Atlanta Falcons, they're number 4 on our list. Jalen Walker at 15, he just fell in their lap. They didn't have a choice. He's going to drive his car to the facility because he played at Georgia the last few years. And then at pick 26, James Pierce Jr., who was probably a top 10 talent, but some off-field concerns. Some teams had him off the board. He made a ton of 30 visits, and the Falcons thought enough of him to take him at 26. They probably would have taken him at 15 had Jalen Walker not been there. And you might say, well, why give up all that draft capital? Well, if he's a first-round pick this year and you love what you had in him and you were going to take him at 15, then you will hear nothing from me about that. And then finally, Xavier Watts. They only had 5 picks. They used them all. Xavier Watts, the safety out of Notre Dame. Ball hawk, 13 interceptions the last 2 years. Former wide receiver. I love what they did. Those first 3 picks. Forget everything else. They're finally going to try to make this defense a Raheem Morris defense, it feels like, Rand.
Absolutely. And this would have been top 5, top 3 for me as well, A+. And we're not going to just stop at those first 3 picks because you're leaving off my man, badass Billy Bowman. And after they took him, I texted Raheem in all caps, badass Billy Bowman. And he responded back, dog. Enough said. I'm all on board.
Love to see it. Love to see it. After taking skill position player after skill position player after skill position player in the recent drafts at the top of the draft for the Atlanta Falcons, they're going defense. They're going all in on fixing that unit, and I love what they've done so far. All right, we only got 3 teams left. If you've been keeping score at home, you know who they are. If not, you got to come back and find out. We'll see who number 1 is, too. We'll talk about all 3 of those teams right after this. All right, Rand, 3 teams left to go as we grade every single draft class, ranking them from 32 down to 1. Number 3, Las Vegas Raiders. Man, there was a time back during those Mike Mayock, John Gruden years where the draft didn't make sense to outsiders looking in. Some of those hits picked, a lot of them didn't. This man feels like an absolute grand slam. John Spytek is there. Pete Carroll is there. Chip Kelly is there. Tom Brady's there. First up, Ashton Jeanty at number 6. Sign me up. Then they trade down 10 spots and get an extra pick at 99. At 58, they take my guy Jack Besh, the big wide receiver out of TCU by way of LSU. And in pick 99, they got my guy Charles Grant, the developmental offensive tackle out of the College of William Mary. Shout out to William Mary. The very next pick in round 4, they got Dante Thornton Jr., 6'4", 200 pounds, legit 4.3 speed. They are making this offense electric, and they did address some of their needs on defense, both the defensive line. They got a linebacker in round 7, and they got a developmental quarterback, Cam Miller, in round 6. I don't know where the issue is in this draft class. This is one of the best draft classes I can remember in recent Raiders history, and that includes the one that involved Brock Bowers, the 13th overall last year.
Can we just start? All right, we see the Ashton Genty graphic. We know what he is. We've talked about him. You know, we ran different, nice video montages of him. Great. Can we talk about J.J. Pegues, the big fella out of Ole Miss? Let's start here. He wore number 38 at Ole Miss, which is the Chucky Mullins number, which is given to a guy that is leadership, that has perseverance. So they gave him that. Big defensive tackle. And by the way, they put him in the backfield, and he was their goal line wildcat quarterback, if you will. Now, I don't know if they called it the wildcat. I've never seen a 300-pound wildcat before. But the fact that they put the big man back there, not only did he run it, they let him throw it every now and then. This guy's a big athlete. He was fun to watch. And shout out to my man, AJ Highsmith. He's been talking about J.J. Pegues from the very beginning and was like, hey, man, when we were still in Tennessee, he said, if you give me one pick this year, can we please just take him? I just want to see what the possibilities are to have him. But like you said, John Spottek and their staff, they went into this thing locked and loaded. And Pete Carroll, this man knows what he's doing. He is a true evaluator of talent, and he knows how to build a roster. I know it was some struggles earlier on in his career, whether he had control or not, we don't know, in New England and with the Jets. But when he got his opportunity at USC, he built one of the more talented rosters that we've seen come through college football. Now, I'm sure the 2001 University of Miami team will argue that, as well as the 2001 University of Florida team. Go Gators. I was on that team, so I had to throw that one in there. But Pete has traditionally built one of those top-end rosters. And like we said before, we mentioned one of his first draft classes in Seattle that people didn't like, and it came on to be one of the best classes ever, and they won a Super Bowl with those guys, right? And so you trust this staff. Spottek has been throughout this league. He's seen it done. He's helped build that roster down in Tampa Bay that they won a Super Bowl with. So these guys know exactly what they're doing, and they showed that this weekend.
Yeah, I got to give our guy Lige a little bit more love. He turned me on to J.J. Pegues, and I watched him. He had 4 sacks this season. He scored 7 touchdowns, and not scooping scores. He lined up, as you pointed out, in the backfield or as a one-man wrecking crew in the whatever their version of Wildcat is. Former Auburn player, started out as a tight end in college, and he provides the versatility. Like Patrick Ricard looks at J.J. Pegues and goes, gosh, I wish I was like that guy on offense. That's how electric he is at times.
Now, here's something that we've seen Pete Carroll do, and I just thought about it as we were talking about this, and especially when you said he was a former tight end. Pete Carroll has converted some of these defensive linemen and put them in the backfield at running back, at fullback, kind of like our man Jim Harbaugh has done with some of his guys. So I will almost guarantee that there will be a goal line package with Pegues in the backfield. And I can definitely see that coming for the guys in Las Vegas. So if you're in Las Vegas and you're at the casino, bet on that.
All right, there you go. And by the way, it's one thing to tackle JJ in the first quarter. Like those SEC kids in the fourth quarter look like they wanted no part of that coming downhill. He's a lot of fun, man. And if he can do both, and the way he played defensive line was a lot of fun to watch in terms of how twitchy he was. All right, number 2 on our list. You may know a little something about this. Right down the road, Tennessee Titans, A+. Cam Ward almost automatically makes it an A+. There was no overthinking it there. But Femi Oladejo, the edge rusher out of UCLA, has only been playing outside for 1 year for UCLA. He went in the second round. Kevin Winston Jr. was hurt for almost the entirety of the season for Penn State, but his 2023 tape, the safety there is hot, as our buddy BMAC likes to say. Kamiri DK, wide receiver out of the slot from some university down there in Gainesville. 4.39, I think is what he ran. He's big target. plays in the slot, and they needed some speed there to help out their new quarterback. They got that in Kamari DK. They got Elikai Minor, the wide receiver, possession receiver out of Stanford, also with a 4th-round pick. And their other 4th-round pick was Gunnar Helm, one of my favorite tight ends in this class, Rand.
Yeah, same. And that was going to be the first point I went to was Gunnar Helm. Really liked this young man. And he was a guy that I started noticing as I was evaluating other guys on the Texas roster. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, why isn't anybody talking about him? And so I always had to make my notes at the top of the page on guys who may not have made my initial list. And so I would always circle back and watch them. And then, like I said before, we were at the Vanderbilt, Texas game. And just to see him in person and how big he is, like it made me appreciate him even more. So I like that fit in Brian Callahan's offense. And then just going back to Cam, like this was the right pick for them. This was the right pick from a talent perspective and a culture perspective. And I thought it was really cool for Warren Moon to meet him there and give him permission to wear number 1. So that was a really good thing to see and a nice passing of the torch. And so like what they did there. Our man O2 out of UCLA, I could see Denard Wilson being creative and moving him around with his off-the-ball linebacker experience because they signed Cody Barton this offseason, and the spot next to him is pretty wide open. So it'll be a competition of James Williams and Cedric Gray and among other players that they have on that roster. And I pretty much I can see O2 factoring in there and then just being creative with him, working him off the edge some as well. So like what they did there, and it gives this team a chance to compete in the AFC South because that division is really heating up. And now everybody in the division has a young quarterback to work with while Indy works through their situation and figures it out.
That's right. No, and that just tells you how quickly things can change because Anthony Richardson was a top 5 pick, and there are now conversations about how that's going to work. But yeah, and congratulations to Cam for getting number 1 from Warren Moon. Abdul Carter had no such luck from Lawrence Taylor. Lawrence said, nah, you need to go find your own number and make that number important.
Yeah, Abdul, I don't know. Maybe he was celebrating a little too much before he went in that building. Because we sat back and we were talking about it with Musso in the green room of what numbers he going to wear. And then you have to be reminded he can't wear 11 because Phil Simms wore 11, and that's retired. And then to have the audacity and the gall to ask for 56, like, all right, young fella, pipe down. You know, it's okay. But you're not getting 56. So he's going to have to be creative with his next number. And he's going to have to sign that contract quick and break out the checkbook because he's going to have to pay somebody for one of those good numbers.
You should pull a Matthew Golden and go with 22. Let's just say everybody wear 22. Problem solved. You don't have to worry about it. All right, finally in our list, and I mentioned that the Baltimore Ravens had to get better because they got to chase down the Chiefs. This team still has nightmares about it. But they're number 1, the Buffalo Bills, for me. I had them as my favorite draft class, and the rich do indeed get richer because there are very few holes in this team. And Brandon Beane said early on, Josh Allen, you got to handle the offense because we go in defense. The top 5 picks are all defense. Max Harrison, the corner out of Kentucky, goes pick 30. TJ Sanders, the defensive lineman out of South Carolina, goes in the 2nd round. Landon Jackson, who had a 40.5-inch vertical, by the way, goes in round 3, the edge rusher out of Arkansas. And then one of my favorite guys that just didn't put it together in 2024 because of a back injury, Deion Walker, 6'7", 330 pounds. If they unlock him, Rand, and get him to where he was in 2023, Lord have mercy on the rest of the AFC because the Bills are going to be knocking down the door in Kansas City.
So first of all, I want to start here because we made them our number 1. And I hope Brandon Beane sees this. And Sharon, when we done, if you could once we chop this up, if you can get it to me, I want to make sure Brandon Beane sees this because he was on local Buffalo radio today feeling spicy. And he was going off on their local media because the local Buffalo media trashed this draft. So I want Brandon Beane to see that Ryan Wilson knows what he's talking about and has this as the number 1 class, and maybe he'll show us some favor and some love. I don't know, but we'll make sure Beane gets this. And Ryan, when we're done, and for those who are out there, please go read what he had to say because he let him hear what was on his mind today. But to your point, first of all, let's talk about TJ Sanders, right? Because I know there were some concerns here with this pick. And he's undersized, and how are you getting bigger? And you already have a guy like this in Ed Oliver. you still have Daquan Jones. Daquan Jones is a first and second down dominant run defender. But you don't necessarily have another guy in sub that's going to come in and rush opposite of Ed Oliver. And now you do in TJ Sanders. You have a guy that now they could employ their look up front where you have 2 wide 3 techniques rushing over guards in those situations. And you've added Bosa, and you still have Epineza over there, and you still have Rousseau over there. And so now you got all of these guys that you can still use, and this is making this front dominant up front. And then you go get the big fella from Kentucky, who I've compared to in the past to Alan Branch, who is a huge mountain of a man. And like you said, he's dealt with back injuries, and pray and knock on wood that the back is healed and he's ready to go. Because if he just has one thing to learn. And at 6'7", 330 pounds is pretty hard to do. But if he could just play with low pad level and a flat back, like they could dominate up front. And even if he does not get home on the rush, he can just stop, get his hands up. And now you restrict the throwing ability for the quarterback and the windows for the quarterback to throw through. And let's throw in with the linebacker core and how their linebackers have played in terms of taking the ball away. Teams are going to be slow to throw the ball over the middle anyway. So, Josh, no pressure on you to figure this thing out and to make it happen. But I like the moves that they've made, and they're locking in, and they're going to try to take advantage of this window to really close the gap and get themselves into that Super Bowl one day.
And I mentioned the 5th round pick, Jordan Hancock, the safety. He's going to fit right in at Ohio State, fit right in with DeMar Hamlin and Taylor Rapp in that safety room with the way he plays. And the next pick, they took 3 picks later, Jackson Hawes, the tight end out of Georgia Tech. The best blocking tight end I had in this draft class. So he's going to come in. He's not going to be doing what they're going to ask Dalton Kincaid to do. He's going to be inline blocking, and that's going to help out. That's the help you get, Josh Allen. There you go. Make the rest of it work. All right, we'll take one more quick break, and then we'll wrap this thing up. All 32 picks right after this. That's it. We ranked every single draft class, all 32 of them. But we are not done because the draft never sleeps. We're going to cover the 2026 NFL Draft on Thursday. That's right, a mock draft. Scan that QR code wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll be going through the 2026 mock draft. See who those quarterbacks are. Catch you later.